Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this Gaming.com video we're going to be discussing and analysing tech news which, as usual, has popped up over the past 24 or so hours. We're going to be starting things out with HBM3 and DDR5, because the two new memory standards are going to be very impressive indeed, with HBM3, for example, offering potentially over twice the performance of current HBM2 memory. Then we'll move over to TSMC. Specifically news that the company are aiming for a 3nm fabrication plant at a cost of $20 billion US. Then we'll discuss Qualcomm's SnapDragon 845 featuring 4 Cryo Gold cores running at 2.8 GHz and 4 Cryo Silver cores at 1.8 GHz plus a whole bunch more besides. And then finally, small piece of AMD news, specifically sales figures for AMD's CPUs and GPUs, especially over Black Friday, have been very, very good. But, as I said, first things first, HBM3 and DDR5. So this news comes to us from Rambus, who have officially revealed this stuff, and then Computer Base have then taken that information and distributed it over the internet. So first things first, we'll discuss HBM3. And as I mentioned, the performance is going to be at least twice. They're aiming for at least twice the performance of HBM2. Now, it is worth noting that some of the specifications are A, still very early, and B, not all of them have been revealed. But what we do know is that HBM3 will be produced on 7nm and is expected per package to hit 4000 Mbps, or if you prefer 4 GTS. Now, the older memory standards, of course, were produced with 1024-bit memory access. And if the memory was running at its maximum speed, this means you could have 512 GB per second or 1 TB per second, depending on the number of stacks, up to 4 stacks. So, in theory at least, we could be seeing up to 2 TB per second, assuming we see a similar number of stacks supported with with HBM3. To quote Neil Trevet from NVIDIA in an interview I recently had with the chap, more memory bandwidth, please. Basically, memory bandwidth is always a limiting factor, particularly when it comes to graphics technology. If you want to check out an interview with Neil, you can by all means search for his name on the channel. And we've had a couple of interviews, one focused with NVIDIA technology, one focused more with Vulkan / other technologies from the Kronos group. And I'm actually organising another interview with him pretty soon as well, because quite frankly, a lot of stuff's happened recently in the graphics market. But, getting back to the subjects at hand, when it comes to DDR5, what type of technology are we looking at? What type of specifications? Well, once again, we're going to be looking at 7nm, and expected between 4800 and 6400 Mbps. Now, before you start rushing out and throwing your DDR4 memory into the trash can, don't do that quite yet. It's going to take at least a couple of years before these memory standards become, well, you know, the standard, particularly when it comes to the DDR5 side of things. So it's most likely we won't see these GPUs come to the market until, like, let's say 2019 before its regular occurrence, possibly even 2020, and it's probably going to be a similar time frame for DDR5 as well. So, next piece of news, and that would be TSMC. And of course, they are still trying to vie for clients, and with 5nm firmly in their grasp, now they want to embrace 3nm, and so they're already moving towards a fabrication plant in Taiwan which will be dedicated to 3nm. Now, Bloomberg were reporting that 3nm production would be ready to use, but now there are some new reports coming from the company that the company haven't really detailed when the plant will actually be open for business. Instead, they're more touting for business currently. And according to the co-chief executive, Mark Liu, he has said, and I quote, "This fabrication could cost up to $20 billion and represents TSMC's commitment to drive technology forward." Now, this is something you're not going to see on store shelves tomorrow. TSMC are currently being reported to be preparing for risk production of the 5nm node, and that's not going to take place until the first half of 2019. So you can imagine how long it's going to take really before we start seeing 3nm on the shelves. We're not going to see it probably until, like, 21, 22, something along those lines. But, of course, this will mean that we're almost at the cusp of what currently we can manufacture, at least reliably, when it comes to silicon shrinking. I've discussed this quite a bit more in depth in another video, which I'll try to remember to link in the video description. Now, let's move over to Qualcomm's SnapDragon 845. Specifically the technical specifications, and we have a couple of benchmarks, albeit internal benchmarks of the processor. Now it is, as you can probably imagine, in a big little configuration, and it is built on 10nm, albeit with an LPP process. So with its predecessor, Qualcomm were more aiming at power efficiency, so they didn't really focus necessarily on the specifications of the chip, they just more wanted the battery life and that type of thing to be improved. However, they've ramped up the clock speeds, so the 835, for comparison's sake, had their chips running at 2.45 GHz, this is running at 2.8. So, as I mentioned, it's running in the big little arrangement, and the big cluster features 4 Cryo 385 gold cores, and they're running at 2.8 GHz. The little configuration runs with 4 Cryo 385 silver cores, and they're running at 1.8 GHz. The gold cores feature 256 kilobytes of level 2 cache, whereas the silver cores offer just half that, 128 kilobytes of level 2 cache. On top of that, Qualcomm have managed to reduce memory bandwidth consumption by up to 75%, and this is thanks to the inclusion of 2 megabytes of level 3 cache. There's less information, when it comes to the Adreno 630, which is the GPU inside this thing. They haven't really given many details, but what they have said is that it's going to consume about 30% less power, and there will be a performance increase. As a side note, do let me know if you're interested in mobile news. Sometimes I feel that, people don't get so interested in mobile technology, and other times it seems to go down really well, so let me know, guys, whether you like it or not. With that said, there is one other thing that I want to cover, and that is something from Team Red. And this is thanks to an interview with MSNBC, as well as some statements made to Tom's Hardware. So during an interview with MSNBC, Lisa Su said that the rise in processor sales have tripled year over year over the Black Friday / Cyber Monday holiday event. And according to the AMD representatives, this is who spoke with Tom's Hardware, Su was specifically comparing total AMD CPU sales on Black Friday and Cyber / Monday in 2016 compared to 2017, and the numbers in terms of the sales data is directly from Amazon and Newegg themselves. And AMD also decided to comment to Tom's Hardware regarding the graphics sales, and they said that, and I'll quote this verbatim on their website, AMD told us that the sales of its graphics cards were also up a strong double-digit percentage at Newegg and Amazon over the prior year as well. Now, some of this, of course, was possibly down to cryptocurrency, but Lisa Su has downplayed that, and she said, and I quote, "It's really a very small percentage of our business. We think a mid-single-digit percentage of our business. Put Bitcoin aside, and no one can predict what is going on a daily basis, but talk to the underlying technology which is around the blockchain. And I view that as a positive foundational technology that can be changed the way we interact on a daily basis." Now don't forget, of course, this also comes on the back of AMD releasing a specific driver to optimize performance with mining, and that was earlier this year. And I do find it kind of ironic that the company, of course, at that time was saying that they were releasing the Vega packs, and one of the reasons behind the packs is to limit the number of sales for, the whole mining situation, when in reality at the very same time they were releasing the driver, and there were some conspiracy theories around that, but I don't really want to repeat them once again in this video. However, it is worth noting that Vega's supply at the moment is still kind of short, and in some instances you're still going to be paying more than what the MSRP is, but that's most likely more due to HBM2 pricing / limited availability rather than mining demand, but that might change given Bitcoin at the moment is going absolutely ballistic. And as a side note as well, I can't remember if we covered this or not, but AMD are now stopping the manufacture of the reference designs, and instead it's really trying to allocate those chips more to, AIBs, which to me makes a lot of sense. Now, when it comes to the Black Friday event, some of the actual Ryzen processors had almost $200 off. They were drastically cutting the prices, and it was a really good time to buy. Intel, however, have really been discounting the i7-7700K Kaby Lake, and it was often trading blows with Ryzen, specifically the 1700, on like what the best seller was on Amazon. Now the prices, as I said, cut almost like $70 to $80 below the normal pricing, but of course most people who in the know of computers would much rather buy a Coffee Lake processor, because you have either 50% or 100% more cores, depending on whether it's the i5 or the i3 model, which, by the way, represents the biggest jump generation to generation for Intel in about a decade. Now, consider this, that's most likely thanks to AMD putting the thumbscrews on Intel. Another reason, of course, that having a competitor, whether you necessarily like that competitor or whatever, is a good thing. It's one of the reasons that, I always will support having Sony, Microsoft and Nintendo all taking turns in the rabbit race. And as much as sometimes Nintendo do tick me off with some of their YouTube policies and just some of their attitude in general, I'd never, ever, 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 ever want to see Nintendo get out of the hardware race. Despite the fact that I know even some old school Nintendo diehards who have now said, I kind of wish they would just produce games. I don't want that to happen, because to me, Nintendo pushing Sega, God, you can tell where my brain went just then, didn't it? You could, when they're pushing Sony and when they're pushing Microsoft, it keeps those companies wanting to also keep on their toes. And that's one of the reasons that, hey, it's a good thing that Microsoft are making somewhat of a comeback with the Xbox One X. And I also feel the same thing when it comes to processors as well. And especially one of the reasons I've been so supportive of like Epic on the CPU side of things. So there are some who are theorizing that the Coffee Lake shortage has been almost deliberate on the side of Intel, that they just basically want to shift Kaby Lake, because obviously if you had a choice between buying Kaby Lake or buying Coffee Lake, what would you rather do? Obviously you're going to want to buy Coffee Lake, right? Because it's not like you're losing single thread performance, you're just gaining more cores. Honestly, I find it very hard to say to anyone who needs a processor right now and they have a choice between Kaby Lake or not buying Coffee Lake because there is no CPUs available, or buying Kaby Lake. I'd say, what the hell are you doing? Don't buy Kaby Lake, buy Ryzen processor. The only small thing, of course, to take into consideration is the 12nm LPP refresh, which has been announced, and I did do, once again, an analysis on that just recently. And performance-wise, it's looking to be at least 10%, possibly a little bit more, depending on what they do with the clock speeds and other tweaks. With all of that said, hopefully you have enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. And one last thing, if you do fancy supporting us on Patreon, well, by all means, you can check that out. Linked in the video description. Even a single $1 a month would be greatly appreciated. But take care of yourselves. Bye for now.